What is up, my fellow gamers out there? I don't know how about you, but I really love Metroid style games. You know, that typical genre, when you have to explore the levels, you have to find secrets, upgrade your gear, your weapons, get cool abilities which are going to help you getting through the maze-like levels. And there is a whole lot of genre has been built on this style of game. But the first one, the original one on the NES, came out in 1986, ages ago. And as I love these kind of games, I really wanted to experience where it started, how the very first game was. But to be honest, the very first game on the NES was too old school for me. I don't mind old school games, I love retro, but that one was no, there was no map, no in-game map, and for a Metroid kind of game without an in-game map, that is just too hardcore for me. Yes, of course, I could try to memorize the levels and maybe I could use the paper and just draw a map, but no, I don't want to go that far back experiencing the old school things. But the good news is that the first Metroid game has been remade on the Game Boy Advance. And this is Metroid Zero Mission, which has been remade from the original 1986 NES version, and it's really faithful to the original one, and it's has been expanded a bit of like not post-game content, but when you beat the final boss, there's going to be a bit of extra content. But I never experienced that part of the game because I just gave up at the final boss. I was so frustrated. I was saying that, oh no way, I'm not going to do this. I don't mind challenging boss fights. I enjoy boss fights, but that was just unfair. That was I'm getting angry even just thinking about it. I'm going to tell you in the video how my experience was with the boss fight, so I don't want to get into that. But my overall experience was very fine with Metroid Zero Mission. I really enjoyed the game, and however it has some issues with the balancing and the natural progress of the game, and even with the exploration, which I say it's not unfair, but it's not... it could be much more streamlined and yeah, but I'm getting ahead of myself again. So don't waste any more time. Let's jump into the video and I'm going to tell you my experience with Metroid Zero Mission. Let's get started. I tried going back to the original Metroid on the NES more than once because I know how important it is and I wanted to experience it properly. But every time I bounced off it pretty quickly. It felt too old school, too unforgiving, and honestly I just didn't have the patience for it. So instead I picked up Metroid Zero Mission, the Game Boy Advance remake that promises the same core experience but in a much more modern and approachable way. And after spending time with it, I can finally say that I understand why people love Metroid so much, even if the game didn't always make it easy for me to love it back. Going into Zero Mission, I wasn't expecting something revolutionary, but I was hoping for a version of Metroid that keeps the spirit of the original while removing some of that old school frustration that tends to push people away. But, oh boy, I got my fair share of frustration, but let's talk about this later. What I found in Metroid Zero Mission was a game that feels incredibly well designed, almost elegant in how everything connects together, but at the same time, it still holds onto some of those design choices that can leave you stuck, confused, and occasionally questioning your life decisions. The original Metroid, developed by Nintendo back in 1986, helped define what we know called the Metroidvania genre, where exploration, backtracking, and ability-based progression are at the core of the experience. It was groundbreaking at the time, but is also notoriously difficult to navigate, mostly because it gave you very little direction and expected you to figure everything out on your own. And you don't have the map in the NES version. No, that is way too hardcore for me. Zero Mission, released in 2004 for the Game Boy Advance, takes the foundation and rebuilds it in a way that feels far more accessible, while still respecting what made the original special. And for the most part, it succeeds, but it doesn't completely let go of that old school mentality. See what I did here? I said old school mentality, I haven't said old school frustration. As you start playing, the game gives you just enough guidance to feel like you are moving in the right direction, mainly through a small marker on the map that points you toward your next objective. At first, this feels like a huge improvement, because instead of wandering aimlessly, you always have a sense of where you should be heading. But then you start to realize that this marker isn't really telling you how to get there or whether you even can get there yet. And that's where things get, let's use the word interesting, because reaching that point often requires abilities you don't have yet, which means you need to step away from the obvious path and start exploring on your own, which is the main point of the Metroid games, to explore the levels and find where you can or cannot go, find better weapons and upgrades. And this creates a loop where you're constantly moving forward, hitting a wall, and then trying to figure out what you missed, and when it works, it feels incredibly satisfying. But when it doesn't, it can quickly turn into frustration. What kept me going through those moments was the level design, because this is where Zero Mission truly shines. The world is built in such a clever way that every new ability you unlock doesn't just help you progress forward, but also redefine those areas you already explored. You start remembering places that felt like dead ends before, and suddenly they open up, revealing new paths, shortcuts, or hidden upgrades that were always there, just waiting for the right ability to come. There's a real sense of cohesion in how everything connects together, and when you finally piece it together, it feels like you learn the language of the game. This is what I enjoyed the most in Metroid Zero Mission. But the game also expects you to pay very close attention, and not everything is explained in a way that feels intuitive. There were moments where I genuinely had no idea what the game wanted from me, like when you need to activate a transport platform, but the trigger is a small glowing switch hidden on the ceiling that you might not even think to shoot at. Okay, it's not really hidden, it is there, it just, for me, it wasn't really obvious that I had to shoot it, or maybe it's just me. And if you miss something like that, the game doesn't really help you recover from it. Instead, you end up backtracking through familiar areas, trying to find that one detail you overlooked, and while that sense of discovery is part of the Metroid identity, there were times when it felt less like exploration and more like trial and error. And this is where the pace of the game was really broken for me. There were many times where the way to progress was not really obvious, and if you not pay attention, you would completely miss it and your progress is completely stalled. And that's where the frustration really kicks in. The combat itself, which is the most important part of the game, is alright. It feels tight and responsive, and the game does a good job of giving you opportunities to recover, especially in areas where enemies respawn quickly, allowing you to farm energy and ammo if you need it. However, the game quietly expects you to engage with its upgrade system, because if you're not actively searching for hidden energy tanks and power-ups, the difficulty ramps up in a way that can catch you off guard. My problem was that these extra upgrade parts were really hidden. I could not find them only if I just follow a walkthrough. You can find the normal upgrade parts on your way throughout the levels, which is okay, but having more energy and a bigger rocket threshold would help a lot. And this becomes especially noticeable in the later boss fights where your preparation or the lack of it really start to show. In my case, I managed to make it all the way to the final boss of the original section of the game, but by that point my resources were limited, my upgrades weren't where they should have been, and my patience was running dangerously low. Guys, I'm using very fine and very careful words here. I used very profane language by the time I was trying to beat the final boss, and now let me show you how it goes. Be careful, because spoilers are incoming. Okay, are you ready? So, here we are, take a look at this. Projectiles are coming from every direction. You have to stand on these two small platforms while you can shoot those ring bastards, but you cannot do anything about the laser-like beams, and also the big brain bastard is shooting at you. And of course, if you go into the lava, your energy is melting as fast as an ice cube in the sauna. I tried it so many times, and if you die, you have to reload your save, go through a shitty area to try the boss again, and I know that this is a final boss, so it should not be a walk in the park, but still. So, I made a decision that I make only if any or all of the following 3 scenarios are triggered while I'm playing a game. First, the game is getting way too frustrating, way too difficult to be enjoyable, or way too boring. Here, the first 2 scenarios are triggered, so I press the power button so hard and give the game my middle finger, and that's it. I know that Zero Mission actually continues beyond that point after the final boss fight with additional content, but for me, reaching that moment was enough to understand what the game is and what it expects from the player, and I called it a day, and that's it. Despite my experience, Metroid Zero Mission is widely regarded as one of the best entries in the series, and for good reason. It successfully modernizes a classic without stripping away its identity, offering a version of Metroid that is far more approachable than the original, while still preserving that core loop of exploration, discovery, and gradual mastery. For many players, this is the perfect starting point for the series, and even today it remains a standout example of how to remake a game properly. Going back to Metroid Zero Mission, I finally understand what makes these games so special. There's a unique satisfaction in learning the world, unlocking its secrets, and slowly gaining control over something that once felt overwhelming. But, at the same time, it's a game that asks for patience, attention, and the willingness to get lost. I had to learn that sometimes the path forward isn't hidden because the game is unfair, it's hidden because that's the whole point. So, should you play Metroid Zero Mission on the Game Boy Advance? Definitely. Oh, such a nice game over screen. While I'm saying that you play it. Yes, you're definitely going to see that screen quite often. And despite what I said, my experience with the game, it's still a very solid game, and I enjoyed my time with it. And I think it's why this game is important because in this way, with the remake, you can experience the very first game, which has been released on the NES in 1986. And as I said in the intro, that game is too hardcore for me and it's too old school for me. I don't mind retro and I don't mind playing old games, but playing a Metroidvania without map, no, that's a no-no for me. But this one has a lot of quality of life improvements, while still very faithful to the original one, and it keeps the original maps, the original enemies, and it even adds a bit of post-game content after the final boss, which I couldn't experience, but I don't mind it. I made it to the final boss, so that's enough experience for me from this game. And my only negative experience with the game was that I think the natural progression of the leveling your and making your character stronger, it could be a bit more streamlined, because the secrets, I found quite a few secrets throughout the game, not all of them, and I managed to upgrade my energy levels and my weapons, but that still wasn't enough for the final boss. And despite I have quite okay easy-ish time with the normal bosses, but with the final boss I was not able to beat him. And okay, we know that final bosses are not easy to beat and they are not meant to be just a walk in the park, but I think there should be more upgrades throughout the levels which you can find, and you could be a easier time. And also the thing is that there was a lot of things which is like not really explained in the game, and I know that you're supposed to find out things like in the game, but there was time when I had to really think like what the hell I supposed to do, or how I supposed to progress when I felt like really stuck, and I was going back and forth, and I found I'm not sure this block yet, and okay, yeah, so it was, yes, but the problem was that this kind of moving around trying to find my way where I'm supposed to go, it killed my progress and it killed the momentum of the game, because I was just going back and forth, and and it started to frustrate me a bit. But maybe this is a normal Metroid experience, I don't let me know. So yes, definitely give this game a try. It's definitely worth playing. It's a really solid experience, and I don't know if you played it or you plan to playing it. Let me know in the comments below, and I hope that you find this video useful, and I'm going to see you in the next Backlog Quest video. Bye bye.